Hey skiers, it's Bob with SkiEssentials.com. Welcome to our 2026 ski test. Got a new one for you today. It's a DPS Pisteworks 94. This is one of two of the new Pisteworks series of skis, basically designed in conjunction with Ted Ligety, who joined up with DPS this past year, and kind of given an interesting green light to go ahead and put some of his own spin on to DPS skis. And to, I guess, nobody's surprise, they ended up to be more on-trail oriented and more carving oriented than the wider, kind of more traditionally known DPS skis that are better suited for softer snow and deep powder. The Pisteworks series certainly falls more to the front side and the resort end of the spectrum. This 94 kind of with that width and increased flex brings it more to all-mountain versatility. We've seen skis from DPS in this 94 millimeter range. We had a DPS Pagoda Piste 94 that was actually a whole lot of fun. This thing's actually more flexible than that, and I find it to be more well-rounded, even though it does fall more into that front side category, at least relative to DPS's catalog. We do get a full carbon construction here, so two full layers of carbon going along here. But with a thinner core, it does allow for an increased level of flexibility. And that's the first thing I noticed getting on these this year was that, normally you're thinking that carbon is a very stiff material. And while it can be, it can also be used in a thinner profile. And that's going to allow it to be more flexible. So if you don't kind of buoy that carbon either in a three-dimensional format or with other materials, it's going to have that reactive capability, but it can also be flexible at the same time. So I found these to be a little bit more, a little bit softer than I thought they were going to be. But you also get just a ton of pep and a lot of electricity coming out of this ski in all sorts of different conditions and terrain. We had a pretty good DPS day this year with a mix of powder up at the top, kind of like an upper level snow event, and then kind of evened out as you got to the bottom. And so a mix of kind of cut up groomers, moguls, and then smoother snow. This Pisteworks 94 to me felt right at home. I had an absolute blast on this ski. I really enjoyed the carbon powered skis of the head core lineup. I'm a big fan of the Kaizen and the Whaler line, so it makes sense that carbon preference would translate into Pisteworks 94 for me. I was surprised at how strong it felt coming out of a turn for how light and how flexible it was. And that's kind of the benefit of having, a lot of sophisticated engineering going into a ski. Shape-wise, it is 94 millimeters underfoot. We get a 19 meter turn radius here, so you can kind of let this thing go a little bit longer than the shorter, more traditionally DPS 15 meter turn radius. Not a ton of camber underfoot. It's, again, the flex of the ski allows you to kind of mash it down and stand on the snow without a whole lot of camber. And then we get decent amount of tip rocker here. It's definitely for a 19 meter turn radius, a fairly progressive shape and style of ski. So some of that taper's brought in to help with soft snow performance. And then we actually kind of see a decent amount of rocker in the tail. So length and splay-wise, if you're thinking about a ski within the Pisteworks line, I think that the normal train of thought would bring you to more of a flat and squared off tail. And while we do have kind of that flatter look at the back, the taper is brought down into the ski. So it's a little bit more of a playful tail shape that goes along with this ski. It is certainly a directional carving and resort-oriented ski, but I think that it's fair to say that this has a good amount of versatility built in, and that's what I found to be the most fun part, was that you get a lot of pep coming out of a ski in bumps and in crud. You normally feel the dampness of metal just kind of smoothing it all out, but this was a lot more engaging in those zones from my experience. We also have some tester feedback from Hans de Boer. He said, they held an edge better than expected. Not quite as playful as I initially had expected with the carbon core, but it was solid and predictable. Yeah, I think that the expectation of a ski like this can kind of change from what you actually end up getting it on. I think Hans and I had slightly different experiences, and that's totally fine. You know, carbon does kind of create a polarizing feedback. Some people are really into it, and some people just have a different, you know, a different reality. But overall, fun to see progression made within DPS's line, specifically this Pisteworks 94 for all mountain skiing. I think that advanced and expert skiers are going to get the most out of it. They're going to be able to access that side cut. They're going to like the rebound and the energy of the carbon. I think it might be a little bit much for an intermediate just based on the reactivity involved in the ski, and we kind of always caution against that for more carbon-based skis, that the reactivity is at a higher level than you may expect. But overall, really fun. Had a blast on this. Would love to get to know it a little bit more this upcoming year for sure. So make sure you check out the all-new DPS Pisteworks 94 here at SkiEssentials.com, and we will see you out there on the hill. Bye.